You can feel lonely even when you're not alone. You can feel lonely even when you're not alone. And maybe that's the strangest kind of loneliness, because you're surrounded by people. Your phone is full of messages. Someone is sitting right next to you. There are people talking around you. Maybe you even have friends. Maybe you have family. Maybe someone loves you. And yet, there is still this strange feeling that nobody can actually reach you. You laugh with people. You talk. You reply to messages. You go outside. You do everything a person is supposed to do. But somewhere underneath all of it, there's a quiet feeling that says, I'm still alone in here, and you may not even know how to explain it. You don't necessarily want more people. You don't necessarily want another conversation. You just want to feel connected, truly connected. You want to feel like someone actually sees you, not the version of you that you show people, not the personality you've learned to perform, not the person who says, I'm fine. You want someone to somehow reach the part of you that you don't know how to explain. And when that doesn't happen, you can be sitting in a room full of people and still feel completely separate from the world. But what if there's something about loneliness that we've misunderstood? What if loneliness isn't always about the number of people around you? What if sometimes the deepest loneliness comes from the feeling that you are a separate thing inside an enormous world? Think about the last time you felt lonely. Maybe it was late at night. Your phone was in your hand. You were scrolling through other people's lives. Someone got married. Someone went on a trip. Someone is surrounded by friends. Someone is celebrating something. Someone is posting photographs where everyone looks happy. And you're lying there watching all of it. You aren't physically alone. You're connected to millions of people through a screen. And somehow, you feel even more alone, because you're looking at everyone else's lives from the outside. You can see them, but you can't enter their experience. You can watch their happiness, but you can't feel exactly what they feel. You can read their words, but you don't know what is happening inside them. And suddenly you become painfully aware of something. You are trapped inside your own experience. You can never completely step into another person's mind. You can never directly experience another person's consciousness. You can talk to them, touch them, love them, listen to them. But there is always some invisible distance. And sometimes, that distance feels enormous. Maybe that's why loneliness can feel so strange. It's not simply, nobody is here. It's, nobody can completely reach me. And there is some truth to that. You have thoughts nobody else can hear. Memories nobody else experienced exactly the way you did. Fears you don't know how to explain. Dreams you haven't told anyone. Parts of your personality that only appear under certain circumstances. There are things happening inside you right now that the person sitting next to you knows absolutely nothing about. And the same is true for them. The person beside you is carrying an entire universe you cannot see. Their childhood, their insecurities, their private memories, their hopes, their regrets, their thoughts at 3 in the morning. You look at them, and you see a person. But inside that person is an entire world, just like inside you. And perhaps this is where loneliness begins. We start believing, I am in here, and everything else is out there. Me and the world. Me and other people. Me and life. A little fragment of consciousness looking out through 2 eyes at an enormous universe. And that can feel incredibly isolating. But here's where things get interesting. Look at a wave. Really look at one. A wave rises out of the ocean. It has a shape, a beginning, peak, and eventually, it disappears. You could point at it and say, look at that wave. And another wave comes along. Different height, different shape, different movement. And you could say, that's another wave. They appear separate. One is here, the other is there. One rises first, the other rises later. They seem like individual things. But is the wave actually separate from the ocean? Can you take a wave out of the ocean and place it somewhere else? Can you say, this is the wave, and this is the ocean, and they are two completely different things? No. The wave is the ocean, appearing temporarily as a wave. And maybe human beings aren't as different from this as we think. You have a body. I have a body. Someone else has another body. Different faces. Different names. Different histories. Different personalities. Different lives. We appear separate. And on one level, we obviously are. You have your life.
Ihe mine.
You have your responsibilities, your relationships, your experiences, your thoughts. But underneath all those differences, we are participating in the same existence. You didn't create yourself out of nothing. You didn't manufacture the air you breathe. You didn't create the sunlight. You didn't create the food that became your body. You didn't invent the language you speak. You didn't build the world you were born into. You arrived in the middle of something that was already happening. And your entire life has been an interaction with everything around you. The food became your body. The air became your breath. The world became your thoughts. Other people shaped your personality. Your experiences shaped your beliefs. Your environment influenced your choices. So where exactly does you and everything else begin? Think about breathing. You usually think of breathing as something you do. I am breathing. But look closer. You don't consciously create oxygen. You don't manufacture the air. You don't command every cell in your lungs. You don't tell your heart, beat now. You don't tell your digestive system, begin digestion. You don't consciously manage thousands of biological processes happening inside you. Life is happening through you, without requiring your permission, and yet we experience ourselves as completely separate individuals trying to control everything. Maybe that's why loneliness can become so painful, because the mind creates a picture of a little isolated self, and then asks, how do I connect with everything else? But perhaps connection isn't something you have to manufacture. Perhaps you've never actually been disconnected. Imagine a fish swimming through the ocean. The fish might somehow become convinced that the ocean is somewhere outside it. It searches. It swims around looking for water. It asks, where is the ocean? But the entire time, it's already inside it. The search itself becomes absurd. And perhaps human beings do something similar. We spend years looking for connection, looking for the perfect relationship, the perfect group of friends, the perfect community, the person who finally understands us. And relationships matter. Of course they do. Human beings need relationships. We need affection. We need companionship. We need people. But sometimes we expect another person to solve a deeper sense of separation that existed before they arrived. And that's an impossible responsibility to place on another human being. Because even when someone loves you deeply, you can still feel lonely, even in a relationship, even in marriage, even surrounded by friends. Why? Because the mind can still maintain the feeling, I am over here, and everyone else is over there. You might have experienced this yourself. You're sitting beside someone you care about. They're physically close, but you're somewhere inside your head. Maybe you're worrying about something. Maybe you're afraid they don't understand you. Maybe you're waiting for them to say the right thing. Maybe you're comparing the relationship to what you imagined it should be. And instead of experiencing the person, you're experiencing your thoughts about the person. They're right there, but you're separated from them by a wall of thought. And sometimes, that's the wall we call loneliness. Think about a crowded train. Hundreds of people. Everyone is physically close, shoulders touching, people sitting next to each other. But almost everyone is inside their own private world. One person is thinking about work. Another is thinking about an argument. Someone is listening to music. Someone is looking at their phone. Someone is worried about money. Someone is thinking about someone they love. Hundreds of bodies, hundreds of private worlds. And for a moment, you might suddenly notice, Everyone here is experiencing something. Every person you pass on the street has an inner world. The person serving your coffee, the person driving the bus, the stranger walking past you, the old man sitting alone, the child running across the street, the person you thought looked rude, the person who smiled at you. Every single one of them is experiencing life from somewhere behind their own eyes, just like you. And suddenly, the world can feel a little less like a collection of strangers, and a little more like an ocean of experiences. This changes the way you look at people. Instead of, that person doesn't understand me, you might think, that person is also trying to figure this out. Instead of, they have a better life than me, you might remember, they also have an inner world I cannot see. Instead of, nobody feels the way I do, you might recognize, they may feel something remarkably similar, even if their story is different. Because loneliness often tells you, you are uniquely alone, but suffering is strangely universal. Fear is universal. Loss is universal. Wanting to be loved is universal. Wanting to matter is universal. Feeling misunderstood is universal. Being uncertain about life is universal. Everybody is carrying something. You simply don't see most of it. And perhaps that's why genuine connection can happen so quickly sometimes. You meet someone, you talk for an hour, and somehow, you feel like you've known them for years. Why? Because something in you recognizes something in them. Not necessarily because your lives are identical. Maybe they're completely different from you. Different culture, different age, different personality, different experiences. But underneath the details, there is something familiar, the desire to be understood, the fear of losing people, the desire to belong, the confusion about what to do with this strange thing called life, the feeling of waking up every morning and somehow having to continue. These things don't belong to one person. They're human, but there is another kind of loneliness, quieter one, the loneliness of not being comfortable with yourself. You can fill your calendar, meet people constantly, keep your phone busy, always have something playing in the background, always have someone to message, and still feel uncomfortable when you're finally alone. Because when everything becomes quiet, you meet yourself. No notifications, no conversations, no entertainment, no distractions, just you. And if you're uncomfortable with your own presence, silence can feel like loneliness, so you immediately reach for the phone. You open an app, watch something, message someone, play something, anything to avoid being alone with your own mind. But maybe being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. Solitude can actually become the place where loneliness begins to soften, because you start discovering, I can be with myself without needing to escape. You sit quietly. You notice your thoughts. You notice your emotions. You notice the world around you. And slowly, your own presence becomes less threatening. You don't need constant stimulation. You don't need someone constantly telling you that you're okay. You begin to develop a relationship with your own existence. And strangely, the less desperate you become to escape yourself, the easier it can become to genuinely connect with others. Because you're no longer asking, please complete me. You're simply saying, come share this life with me. That is a completely different kind of relationship. When you need another person to fill an emptiness inside you, the relationship becomes heavy. Every silence feels like rejection. Every delayed message becomes evidence. Every disagreement feels dangerous. You need reassurance. Again, and again, and again. But when you don't expect another person to eliminate your fundamental sense of incompleteness, you can actually meet them. You can listen. You can appreciate them. You can love them. You can let them be themselves. And you can let yourself be yourself. Connection becomes less about possession and more about participation. Two people sharing an experience, rather than two lonely people desperately trying to use each other as escape routes. So what do you actually do when loneliness appears? First, don't immediately assume something has gone wrong. Don't turn loneliness into a verdict about your life. Feeling lonely doesn't mean nobody loves you. It doesn't mean you're unlikable. It doesn't mean you'll always be alone. It doesn't mean something is fundamentally wrong with you. Sometimes loneliness is simply a signal that you want connection, a signal that you've been isolated, a signal that you've been living too much inside your head, or sometimes a signal that you've forgotten how to be present with yourself. Instead of fighting the feeling, notice it. Where do you feel it? In your chest? Your stomach? Your throat? Does it feel heavy? Empty? Restless? And instead of immediately asking, how do I make this go away? Try asking, what is this feeling asking me to notice? Then, do something very simple. Reach outward, not dramatically, not desperately, just humanly. Message someone, call a friend, sit with your family, talk to someone without pretending you're perfectly fine. Go somewhere where other people are. Take a walk, smile at someone, have a real conversation. You don't need to solve your entire emotional life in one night. Sometimes connection begins with something incredibly ordinary. Hey, how are you? And then actually listening to the answer. But also, learn to notice the moments when you're already connected. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of rain, the food you're eating, the person sitting beside you, the stranger who smiled, the music you're listening to, the air entering your lungs, the ground beneath your feet. You may have spent so much time searching for some enormous feeling of belonging that you've missed the small connections happening constantly. You are not watching life from outside of it. You're participating in it. Every breath is an interaction. Every meal, every conversation, every sound, every relationship, every sunrise, you are already involved. And perhaps that's the deeper realization. You don't have to become connected to life. You have to notice that you were never outside of it. The wave doesn't need to find the ocean. The wave is already the ocean. It only appears separate for a moment. It rises. It moves. It has its own shape. And then it returns. Maybe that's us. We have our names, our personalities, our stories, our private struggles, our individual lives. We are different. Those differences matter. But perhaps underneath all of them, there is something shared. The same strange experience of being alive. The same world. The same uncertainty. The same desire to be understood. The same mystery of consciousness. The same movement from birth, through experience, toward whatever comes next. So if you're feeling lonely right now, don't immediately conclude that you're disconnected from life. Maybe you're simply caught inside the story of separation. Maybe you've been looking outward for something that begins inward. Maybe you don't need to find an enormous number of people. Maybe you need one honest conversation. Maybe you need to stop hiding from yourself. Maybe you need to put the phone down for a few minutes and simply sit with your own existence. Maybe you need to go outside. Look at the sky. Watch people moving around. Listen. Breathe. Notice that life is happening everywhere around you, and you are not standing outside of it. You're already here. The loneliness may still come. It may return tomorrow. It may return even when you're surrounded by people. And that's okay. You don't have to defeat it forever. When it appears, listen to it, reach toward someone, and at the same time, come back to yourself. Because connection isn't only about finding someone who finally understands every part of you. Sometimes connection begins when you stop demanding that another person remove the distance and start noticing that the distance was never as absolute as you thought. You are a person. So is everyone around you. Different stories, different bodies, different waves, but one ocean. And maybe the deepest form of connection isn't becoming identical to someone else. It's recognizing something shared beneath the differences. That strange fact that all of us, in completely different ways, are here. experiencing, searching, loving, losing, wondering, trying to understand, trying to belong, trying to make sense of this brief and mysterious experience we call life. So the next time you find yourself in a room full of people and somehow still feel alone, look around. Really look. There are entire worlds sitting around you. And there is a world inside you too. You don't have to escape either one. You don't have to force connection. You don't have to become someone else. Just soften the wall for a moment. Look, listen, be here. And maybe you'll notice something you couldn't see while you were desperately searching for it. You were never standing outside of life. You were life, experiencing itself from where you happen to be.